Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to take another look at the domain name system, but rather than talk about it theoretically, we are going to see it in action. Now, in an earlier video, I talked a little bit about what is the domain name system, the format for the DNS file, the purpose of it, the breakdown of the domain levels or tiers, as well as the possible top-level domains. In this example, though, in this video, we want to focus just simply on the purpose behind it. Now, if you recall from the earlier video, I said that effectively what it does is it allows for us to have a rather friendly mapping, if you would, between the resources that you want to get access to. In other words, your favorite website, your favorite social media site, and the IP address, in this case, the IPv4 address behind that particular resource. Now, this is not limited necessarily to websites, but we are going to focus just on the websites or the web resources that we will use and develop in this course. Now, to begin with, what you want to do is you want to open up a console or a terminal, either on your Windows machine or on a Mac or Linux machine. And in this case, what I want to do is simply familiarize myself with the IP address settings for my particular computer. So in this case, I'm on a Windows machine, so I'm just going to type in ipconfig /all. If you're on a Linux or a Mac, it's going to be ifconfig, and you'll notice that I have my IPv4 address. Yours will almost assuredly be different from this. The idea is that it's going to be an IP address that more than likely will be on a private network, unless, for instance, you are on a work network or perhaps you are on a public Wi-Fi. In this case, this is just the IP address that was assigned by my home router that also acts as a DNS server, or excuse me, a DHCP server. It does also act as my DNS server, but we'll take a look at that in just a second. You'll see that I also have a IP address, IPv4 address associated with my default gateway, as well as an IPv4 address for my DNS server. In this case, all of these are going to be IPv4. That is going to be primarily what we are going to focus on. And you can also notice that my router acts as both a DHCP as well as a DNS server and my gateway. Now, in an earlier video, I showed you how you can actually get the IP address of the DNS server from your ISP or from your internet service provider by logging into your router. I would encourage you to take a second to go about doing that. In this particular case, my ISP or internet service provider is AT&T, and I did a lookup to verify that that was in fact my DNS server. In other words, I am not going through the trouble of setting up all of these records, but rather all of the requests from my client, in this case, my laptop, will simply go to the DNS server that is set by my ISP. Well, how do we actually use this? Well, the simplest way to try this is to simply ping a resource that we know will respond. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ping www.uab.edu. And in this case, you'll see that I get an IP address from a reply back specifically from 198.73.7.192. And sure enough, I can simply come up to my web browser and put www.uab.edu into the address bar. And sure enough, I get the web page, landing page for uab.edu. Now, what I'd like to do, though, is I'd like to take this IP address that replied, and I'm simply going to attempt to ping it directly. So in other words, if I ping 198.73.7.2 and hit enter, you'll see that I now get a reply from, and essentially now you can see that that is the same machine. In other words, basically my traffic that was going to uab.edu or www.uab.edu is effectively simply going to 198.73.7.192. And to prove that, what we'd like to do is simply paste this now into my web browser. And you can see that I do get a warning here. You'll see that my connection isn't private, But what we can do is we can simply go to advanced. In this case, I'm using Chrome, and I'm just going to go ahead and proceed to the 198.73.7.192. And you can see here that I'm effectively at the exact same resource that I was attempting to get to using the friendly name. Now, I will point out, just to be clear on something, that technically I am not secure. In other words, basically, there is not a certificate that has been signed using the 198.73.7.192. And that's a little bit outside of the scope of this particular class. But fundamentally, you can see here that this is the same resource. So effectively, what your DNS server does for you is it simply provides a friendly mapping, or a mapping, if you would, from this friendly name. So in other words, something that's easier to remember, and the IP address of the underlying resource. Now, again, this is not limited simply to websites. This can be used for any number of services, including mail, DHCP, FTP, web services, of course. But again, we're not simply limited to resources associated with a website. So hopefully you found this video useful. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you for watching.